welcome to the Prophecy Club. We're going to continue talking with Zen Garcia today. He's a webmaster, video producer, radio host, author of 7 books, in the ministry for 10 years, and we're going to continue talking about his book, Lucifer, the father of Cain. Now, a lot of people didn't understand. If you just read the King James, just straight reading it, I think most folks, including myself, would not see that it says that Lucifer is the father of Cain. So we spent several days here talking about why it is, when you take into consideration other verses and other commentaries on the Bible. I think he's got some pretty working reasons why probably Lucifer was the father of Cain. But Zen, you wanted to talk to us about John 3:12 today specifically, so say on, tell us more.
All right, let's cover just a few verses here, and then we'll tie this into all the commentary that we've shared in the previous 4 shows. It says that he that committeth sin is of the devil, for the devil sinneth from the beginning. For this purpose the Son of God was manifested, that he might destroy the works of the devil. Whosoever is born of God doth not commit sin, for his seed remaineth in him, and he cannot sin because he is born of God. In this the children of God are manifest, and the children of the devil. Whosoever doeth not righteousness is not of God, neither he that loveth not his brother. For this is the message that ye heard from the beginning, that we should love one another, not as Cain, who was of that wicked one, and slew his brother. And wherefore slew he him? Because his own works were evil, and his brother's righteous. This is 1 John chapter 3, verse 8 through 12. The reason I wanted to begin and focus on this particular passage is because a lot of people utilize and focus on this passage saying that, yes, there are spiritual children of the devil, which indeed there are. But I believe that this is also emphasizing, as we covered in the Isaiah chapter 14, the verse about Lucifer being an abominable branch and to prepare slaughter for his children, that they do not rise to inherit the cities. It's the same kind of thing, that this is going back to the beginning and giving allusion to the devil sinneth from the beginning. That beginning was the garden and the beguilement, and even further it goes back to the war in heaven, because that also is connected to the enmity between the seed of the serpent and the seed of the woman, the separation of light and darkness, their banishment from the heavens, 1/3 of the angels of the Most High joining Lucifer in rebellion, they're being banished here to the earth. And then once Adam and Eve are created and placed into paradise, the beguilement is the sin that goes back to that beginning. And so it's referencing that, and it's speaking about the devil having been the one that sinneth from the beginning. In a different passage, we covered how it was the beguilement, adultery first, and then that led to murder. That beguilement was that adultery where Eve was beguiled, impregnated with Cain, and then Cain became the first murderer after the nature and following along in ill temperament after the works of the devil, just as it says here. And we know that Christ came into the flesh to destroy the works of the devil and to also eradicate this particular bloodline at the end of days, as we've covered in Matthew chapter 13, where it talks about the tares as being the children of the devil, and that the devil is the enemy that snuck into the garden and that sowed the tares in the time going back to when Adam and Eve were banished and beguiled here to the earth. And so this particular passage is again giving allusion to not as Cain, who was of that wicked one. He truly was of that wicked one, and he killed his half-brother. And this is the beginning of the enmity that would continue until Matthew chapter 13, where Christ in his second coming, when he comes again, the tares will be bound for the fire, and that the wheat would inherit return to the first estate and being placed back into paradise, where Christ said that, I go now to prepare a place for you. In my Father's house are many mansions, and that's where he is until this time when he comes with his angels and his saints, and he ends this whole deception that has been ongoing as the powers and the principalities, these rulers of darkness, wickedness in high places, they have temporary reign over this fallen world in our fallen state of being. This leads me into the next passage that I want to share.
Okay, now hold on. Before you go there,
Sure.
I got a question here. All right,
Sure.
now let me see if I understand what you're saying. You're saying that back in Genesis, so the serpent comes to Eve and beguiles Eve, and he tricks her into eating the fruit. But you're also saying shortly after that, on or about having to do with this same beguilement, he then also had sex with her, and the offspring, this is before Adam had sex with her, the offspring of that union was actually Cain, and that's the reason Cain was afraid that he was going to be killed, and the reason God put the mark on his forehead, basically telling everybody to back off and don't destroy Cain. And then you're saying that same bloodline somehow jumped over the flood, so we had apparently some more cases where the sons of God came down and continued to mate with the daughters of men and continued that same evil bloodline all the way up to now it's the modern days where it's going to be the Antichrist, just as Jesus was half man, half God, the Antichrist being half man, half Lucifer. Is
Right.
that a good overview there?
Yes, absolutely. And that ties, because just as it says that there were giants in the earth before and after the flood, the continuance with this particular bloodline was granted all the way to the harvest.
Well, now,
So-
some people believe that when Joshua was going in cleansing the land, one of the reasons that God told him to kill everybody in that city, man,
Exactly.
woman, child, everything, was because he was destroying the seed of Satan that had
Exactly.
jumped over the flood, basically.
Right, exactly. And that's why, because otherwise, the Most High would seem genocidal or homicidal, and a lot of people take that and twist it and saying that how can we follow a God like this? But if you have discernment and realization that he was sending in Joshua to cleanse the land, much like he did with the flood of Noah's day, and much like David and Goliath, because this war has been ongoing, even with fighting David's brethren fighting against the brothers of Goliath, that this would have continuance until the harvest, and it would be Christ that comes when every knee bows and every tongue confesses
That Jesus Christ is Lord. But now we also, right back in the days of Joshua there's other scriptures that talk about the Zuzim and Imam and all of those, and that says that they're giants, okay? They're the height of a cedar. And we know from Genesis 6:4 that when the sons of God, these aliens, mated with the daughters of men, their offspring were giants. So we still have giants on the other side, on this side of the flood. So you've got a point there. And now let's jump into modern times. Okay, now, as I said the other day, what we see with almost all of the abductions, there are cases where the men have sperm removed, the women have ovum removed, and in some cases they're openly told that they are trying to make a hybrid human alien combination. And since Jesus was half man, half God, since Lucifer doesn't do anything new, he just repeats what God has done and perverts it, it makes perfect sense to me that the Antichrist will be half man, half Lucifer. So all of this ties in to the seed. We talked about Daniel 2:41, how they will mingle their seed with men. So the Bible tells us what you're saying is all true and it all fits.
Right, exactly. It's just that people have never been taught this previously. It's not spoken about in mainstream churches, and so they think this as being some kind of a foreign concept when it has absolutely been interwoven into all of the scriptures, and that Christ spoke about this again in Matthew 13. He said, I will utter things that have been hidden since the foundations of the world, meaning that he would bring this knowledge to light and show us exactly what the parable of the wheat and tares is about.
Well, Jesus said, as in the days of Noah, so also shall the coming of the Son of Man be. Okay, so here we are. In other words, what was going on in the days of Noah is going to be going on in the days that Jesus returns, and that's exactly what you're saying. You're saying that this seed has made it through the flood. There wasn't any seed, by the way, on the boat, but they came again, apparently, because based upon the scriptures, and now we're looking at the Antichrist. So tie this in, this hybridization, tie this into the Antichrist for us. Okay.
I'm going to read one quick passage that will set up the premise for what we're about to talk about. And this is from the Apocryphon of John. It says, And he made a plan with his powers. He sent his angels to the daughters of men, that they might take some of them for themselves and raise offspring for their enjoyment. And at first they did not succeed, and when they had no success, they gathered together again, and they made a plan together. They created a counterfeit spirit, who resembles the spirit who had descended, so as to pollute the souls through it. And the angels changed themselves in their likeness into the likeness of their mates, the daughters of men, and filling them with the spirit of darkness which they had mixed for them, and with evil, they brought gold and silver and a gift and copper and iron and metal and all kinds of things. And they steered the people who had followed them into great troubles by leading them astray with many deceptions. They, the people, became old without having enjoyment. They died not having found truth and without knowing the God of truth. And thus the whole creation became enslaved forever, from the foundation of the world until now. And this, again, sets the whole premise in exactly what you were speaking about, in that they are manipulating and trying to create a fit extension for themselves to work through, that this is the same kind of thing that goes back to what they were doing in the days of Noah, that it speaks about this in the book of Giants, that the miscegenation, and we spoke about this also in a previous show, how they are taking DNA from animals and spiders and all kind of weird things, introducing it into the genetics of even plants, and they're crossbreeding everything so as to corrupt everything, and it's to not only create disease and to corrupt the DNA, but it's also to give them something to work through so that they can have access to this plane of existence. And that's why we have these weird stories of individuals like Phil Schneider and Thomas Costello that speak about these deep underground bases, the genetic manipulations and the kind of hybrid creatures that were created even way back in during that time, and that, as Christ mentions, with as in the days of Noah, this is what we are seeing reflected.
We'll be right back after this message. In 1980, an angel came to Dmitri Duduman and told him that it is written in the Bible and that America will be defeated in 1 hour by Russia. I just made a brand new DVD covering all of the secular, real-life proof that Russia really is preparing to do exactly that. Topics are: Arise, Devour Much Flesh, Russia in Prophecy, Russia Now Rich and Strong, Russia's numerous military expansions, Ukraine, and how it is making the bear angry. Russia is warning the U.S., but we're not listening. Russia is building their military, modernizing submarines, aircraft, missiles, and their army, while the U.S. is downsizing and filled with traitors and weaknesses. 2.5 hours, gift of $30. Go to prophecyclub.com or call 785-266-1112. That's The Russian Bear Rises at prophecyclub.com or 785-266-1112. Order today. It's time for the famous Prophecy Club Summer Blowout. You get 6 DVDs of your choice by calling 785-266-1112. Valued at $30 each. That's $180, all for a gift of just $100. Call 785-266-1112. Grab your cell phone, 785-266-1112. Not available on the internet. 785-266-1112. 6 DVDs for a gift of $100. Call now. And now, back to the program.
As in the days of Noah, this is what we are seeing reflected in our times. These Dr. Moreau type nightmarish scenarios where these kind of genetic experimentations are ongoing, the kind of hybrid creatures that they are creating even now. We have the account of Berosus. I don't know if you know about him, but he was a Chaldean historian that was asked by Alexander the Great to write a history of the prior times, when the fallen angels were here before the creation of modern humanity and the kinds of things that they were involved in. And he makes mention of some hybrid creatures that are just weird monstrosities. And I'll just read a quick paragraph of it just to give you an idea. It says, "There was a time in which there existed nothing but darkness and an abyss of waters wherein resided most hideous beings, which were produced of a twofold principle. There appeared men, some who were furnished with 2 wings, others with 4, and with 2 faces. They had 1 body but 2 heads, the one that of a man, the other of a woman, and likewise in their several organs both male and female. Other human figures were to be seen with the legs and horns of ghosts." Those are the satyrs that we like Pan. "Some had horses' feet, while others united the hindquarters of a horse with the body of a man, resembling in shape the centaurs. Bulls likewise were bred there with the heads of men, and dogs with 4-fold bodies, terminated in their extremities with the tail of fishes. Horses also with the heads of dogs, men too, and other animals with the heads and bodies of horses and the tails of fishes. In short, there were creatures in which were combined the limbs of every species of animal. In addition to these, fishes, reptiles, serpents with other monstrous animals, which assumed each other's shapes and countenances." And then when we think about, even with the Greek mythology and the Egyptian depictions of these weird hybrid god-like, they're fallen angel godlike creatures on the walls of certain pyramids and certain temple complexes, you have all these hybrid beings with the bodies of men but with the heads of all kind of different creatures. The stories of the centaurs and the minotaur men. Even in the Bible, there's the mention of the lion men of Moab. So all these things, even though we think they're childhood fantasy and just too far out to believe that this is all mythology, these things had a basis in reality, and with what we are dealing with as the miscegenation of the gene pool of both plants and animals, and that this kind of thing is ongoing even now. We are not privileged to what the black ops and these covert programs are involved in, but these are the kind of things that they are creating now, even in Nightmare Hall as we speak, as Thomas Costello, who lost his life trying to bring this information to light. And Phil Schneider also was murdered for being a testament to some of these weird and strange things.
I just looked up that verse. It's actually 2 Samuel 23:20. Let me read it. "And Benaiah, the son of Jehoiada, the son of valiant men of Kabazel, who had done many acts, he slew," now listen to this, guys, "2 lion-like men of Moab." Let me read that again. "He slew 2 lion-like men of Moab. he went down also and slew a lion in the midst of a pit in time of snow. So this is basically picturing a winter scene here where he does kill a lion. Okay, so there's a difference between him killing a lion, but this is two lion-like men of Moab. So what Zen is talking about here is correct.
There's also a passage, it's from the book of Jasher. It says, "And it was one day that Zepho lost a young heifer, and he went to seek it. And he heard it lowing round about the mountain. And Zepho went, and he saw, and behold, there was a large cave at the bottom of the mountain. And there was a great stone there at the entrance of the cave. And Zepho split the stone, and he came into the cave, and he looked, and behold, a large animal was devouring the ox. From the middle upward it resembled a man, and from the middle downward it resembled an animal. And Zepho rose up against the animal, and slew it with his swords. And the inhabitants of Chittim heard of this thing, and they rejoiced exceedingly, and they said, What shall we do unto this man who has slain this animal that devoured our cattle? Because they were having a problem with this particular being for a very long time. And there's also one other passage in chapter 36 of the book of Jasher, which also highlights and gives us feedback on some of these strange anomalous creatures that the people were dealing with in the centuries before. It says this, verse 29, "And whilst he was feeding his father's asses, he led them to the wilderness at different times to feed them. And there was a day that he brought them to one of the deserts on the seashore opposite the wilderness of the people. And whilst he was feeding them, behold, a very huge storm came from the other side of the sea, and rested upon the asses that were feeding there, and they all stood still. And afterward, about 120 great and terrible animals came out from the wilderness at the other side of the sea. And they all came to the place where the asses were, and they placed themselves there. And those animals, from their middle downward, were in the shape of the children of men. And from their middle upward, some had the likeness of bears, and some the likeness of kephas, with tails behind them, from between their shoulders reaching down to the earth, like the tails of the Dushaphath, whatever those are. And these animals came and mounted and rode upon these asses, and led them astray, and they went away unto this day. And one of these animals approached Anna, and smote him with his tail, and then fled from that place." And so this again is mention of, some of these weird hybrid type creatures that were half man and half other sort of weirdness.
Okay, Zen, tell us about your book, Lucifer, Father of Cain.
Well, this book, Lucifer, Father of Cain, ties together so many what are veiled and esoteric concepts that most people overlook, which includes the connections with the sons of God mating with the daughters of man, to the Antichrist and to the New World Order that we are dealing with today, and that all of this has its roots going back to the garden and even further to the war in heaven. But that continuation begins here on the earth with the enmity between the seed of the woman and the seed of the serpent. And that this also has everything to do with the Matthew 13, what Jesus Christ is referring to as the parable of the wheat and the tares, where he asserts that the tares are the children of the devil, and that the devil is the enemy that snuck into the garden and that sowed the tares while Adam was asleep or while the people were asleep. And this is also connected to, if you read in the first book of Adam and Eve, or actually it's the second book of Adam and Eve, where they are talking about and imploring to their children the line of, through Seth, because Abel was killed, they tell them to never intermarry into the lineage of Cain, or to mix with the children of Cain, because he was the murderer of their brother Abel. And that is all the way through Noah it is implored over and over and over. Every time the patriarchs are sitting on their deathbed, that's the last thing that they are imploring their children to do, is to never intermarry or mix with the children of Cain. And you will find this has continuance and is an ongoing theme even to where we are now, but that this is involved with the dilemma between Isaac and Ishmael and those two particular bloodlines, and that this is also reflective in the story of Jacob and Esau, and even with David and Goliath and the wars of David's brethren with Goliath and his other 4 brothers. And this also leading us to now to the time of Christ, where he said, I know you are Abraham's seed, but you follow the father, your father is the devil. The synagogue of Satan, Revelation 2:9 and 3:9, all those connections to the Pharisees, the church authorities that killed Abel, up to Zacharias, they are all part of this seed of the serpent, and they do not worship the same God as we do. They do not believe that Christ came as Savior Messiah to offer us salvation and to show us that he is the way and the truth and the light, and how to defeat death, and that if we accept him as Lord and King, that he can give us continuance, and that we have an eternal inheritance, which includes paradise and being with the righteous and with the elect. And so if you don't understand this enmity and the connections between these two different bloodlines, it would be hard-pressed for you to explain the nature of the world, the prevalence of evil, and also the connections of the New World Order and today's society, and we being the final generation, to the seed of the serpent, going back to the enmity in Genesis 3, verse 15.
Right up to the Antichrist. Okay, folks, you've been listening to Zen Garcia. Let me strongly recommend that you grab your pencil right now, and you want to call 785-266-1112. Grab your cell phone, enter it in, 785-266-1112. I don't think we have this offer on the website yet, but you can get it. It's Lucifer, father of Cain. Lucifer, father of Cain. It's available through the Prophecy Club. Give us a call. We'll tell you how to get it. 785-266-1112. The last time, 785-266-1112. Lucifer, father of Cain. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your prayers, and thank you for your gifts of support. God bless. Now from the Prophecy Club, some exciting opportunities for you. Lindsey Williams served as a missionary on the Trans-Alaska Oil Pipeline for 3 years. He became friends with some of the elite that ruled the world. They tell Lindsey, he tells you, the plans of the elite. We're offering 3 of his best DVDs valued at $106, all for a gift of just $38 or more. That's basically order 1, get 2 free. They are The Elite Plans for the Crash. Lindsey gives you the signs to look for before the collapse of the banks and crash of the dollar. Plus, 2 more collapses that will affect you more than the collapse of the dollar. In Currency Revaluation, he explains the greatest event in the last 1,000 years is about how they're going to do away with the Federal Reserve note, bringing in a gold-backed Treasury Reserve note. And in Health Tips of the Elite, he says there is no reason that many people have to suffer from many of the diseases they do simply because they do not know what the elite know that is discussed in this DVD. All 3 DVDs, The Elite Plans for the Crash, Currency Revaluation, and Health Tips, valued at $106, available for a gift of just $38 plus shipping. It's the July gift offer. $38 plus shipping at prophecyclub.com or 785-266-1112. The July gift offer, prophecyclub.com. Order today. It's time for the famous Prophecy Club Summer Blowout. You get 6 DVDs of your choice by calling 785-266-1112. Valued at $30 each. That's $180, all for a gift of just $100. Call 785-266-1112. Grab your cell phone, 785-266-1112. Not available on the internet. 785-266